Let's talk about the role of the salesperson, but more importantly, how it has evolved over the last 10 to 15 years. To do this, let's take a quick look at both the past and the current state of the buyer journey. Now, as you can see on this graphic here, the role of marketing took up about a third of the whole buying process for a potential buyer. And typically they were responsible for creating awareness and when it came to exploring solutions, be in front of the prospect. Now this meant that the salesperson was a gatekeeper to all this information. And if the prospect wanted to learn more about the problem, the solution and potential vendors, they had to speak to a salesperson. So the salesperson not only had a larger part to play in the buyer journey, but they were responsible for gatekeeping a lot more of the critical information when it came to making a decision. However, when we look at the modern buyer journey, as we can see, because of things like the birth of the internet and content marketing, marketing now takes care of most of the buyer journey. So it creates awareness, and when the buyer is exploring the solution or even comparing vendors, they typically have a lot of that information in their hands already. So by the time they come to the salesperson, it's basically about, can they just quickly meet my needs and help me make a decision? So this is really interesting because it's diminished the role of the salesperson, and in some ways diminish the actual persona of the salesperson, because the buyer no longer thinks that they're important in this journey. And in fact, when you look at statistics, they tell you that the salesperson actually isn't important and they want to speak to them at the very last second because they have access to all this information. But there is a slight problem. Just because the buyer has all the information, it doesn't mean that they're informed.
Now imagine going to see a doctor and get a diagnosis, but then you choose to go and see 3 or 4 other doctors. They give you diagnoses, but all the diagnoses are different, but they're all high quality and well thought out. Now what this means is because the information is counter, you're unlikely to make a decision and you're more than likely going to decide to do absolutely nothing.
So what does this mean? Well, the role of the salesperson going forward and how it's going to evolve is going to help the buyer curate the information and basically determine what signals from white noise from the information that they already have. So think about it at the moment. There's so much content around problems, decisions, purchasing, solutions, that sometimes this can create analysis paralysis in the buyer, where when it comes to making a decision, they actually decide to do nothing because the quality of the content, the quality of the signals that they get are just really, really strong. And this is obviously perfectly illustrated in the fact that 53% of opportunities end in no decision. And often this is because the buyer is afraid to take a risk of purchasing something. So what does this mean for sellers? Well, fundamentally, we've got to change the way that we approach buyers. We need to be far more conscious of the fact that they're informed, but also we've got to help them to make sense of all of this information that they've got in front of them. And again, curate the information to help them see that actually the decision they're about to make is the right decision and de-risk it for them. On top of that, there is a load of information that the salesperson has that the buyer simply can't get hold of. And that is the information around the way that your previous customers and current customers have bought your solution in the past. The questions they've asked, the considerations they've made, typical implementation, things like that are going to help the buyer feel more at ease when it comes to making that decision. So all in all, the role of the salesperson has diminished, but we actually can play a more critical part for the simple fact that although we're coming in later, there may actually be a bigger problem that the buyer's facing, and it's not information, it's understanding the real truth and signals behind that information.